As I was working on another story this last week, I stumbled across a page on the World Economic Forum, which listed Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux, as one of its members. And I had seen this before. In fact, this came from many years back. He's been a member of the World Economic Forum, the WEF, for over a decade now, since I think 2012 or maybe even earlier. And it reminded me of several statements that Linus has made over the last several years, where he, aligns politically with communism and woke politics and the like. And I thought it would be worthwhile to kind of remind people of a few things along these lines, because it kind of ties into a lot of the things that we're seeing happening with the Linux Foundation, with the Linux kernel, with various projects and organizations and even companies within the world of open source software. And it's just simply a matter of public record, and it's worth documenting. So Linus Torvalds did speak at the World Economic Forum back in 2013, I believe it was. Yeah, it was 2013. And I wanted to show you a few screenshots of it right here. Let's see, it was an annual meeting of the new champions, 2012, an annual meeting of the new champions of the World Economic Forum of 2012. It was held in the People's Republic of China in Tianjin. I'm probably mispronouncing that there. And in that particular event, Linus spoke many, many times. He did a one-on-one conversation with Linus Torvalds called An Insight, an Idea with Linus Torvalds on his breakthrough idea about how large-scale change can be catalyzed by fostering sustainable technology communities. And it was simultaneously interpreted into English, Mandarin, and Japanese. He gave another roundtable style discussion where, let me see if I can pull this up here. Where is this? Called Strategic Shifts, the Future of Information Technologies, specifically on the impact of emerging Asian globalizers, where he represented the Linux Foundation. Linus Torvalds gave that one there at the WEF. And one on the future of innovation. How are leading innovators reshaping models of research and development, thinking beyond organizational boundaries, rethinking university and industry relationships, etc. And Linus Torvalds Linux Foundation was a key part of that one there. So he's not just one of those guys that got put on the World Economic Forum website because he went to a conference that the WEF was tangentially involved with. The WEF is notorious for doing this. They, one random vice president of a tech company will go to an open source enterprise computing event that will be co-sponsored by the WEF. And so the WEF will go, oh, they're a member of the WEF now, and they'll put them on their website. In fact, there have been people who have actually sued the WEF to get delisted from their website. Right. So that sort of thing does happen. In this particular case, Linus is a repeated speaking member of the WEF. I think he's spoken like 4 times there at the WEF. So he's very, very much a part of it. Maybe you find that problematic. Maybe you don't. But when you take it into context of all of the statements that Linus has made over the years, it is a little bit concerning. I want to point to this particular statement that he made about 2 years ago, where he was chastising someone who used the word woke and communist, the words woke and communist, and as kind of a pejorative. And he was just chastising that person. And I'm just going to read what he said here. Quote, I think you might want to make sure you don't follow me because your woke communist propaganda comment makes me think you're a moron of the first order. I strongly suspect I am one of those woke communists you worry about, but you probably couldn't actually explain what either of those words actually mean, could you? I'm a card-carrying atheist. I think a woman's right to choose is very important, meaning he supports abortions, and he likes it when babies are aborted. I think that well-regulated militia means that guns should be carefully licensed and not just randomly given to any moron with a pulse. So he's advocating for gun control. I couldn't care less if you decide to dress up in the wrong clothes and decided you'd rather live your life without feeling tied to whatever plumbing you were born with, meaning he's supportive of transgenderism and having surgeries to have sex change operations and that sort of thing. And damn it, if that all makes me woke, then I think it does. Then I think anybody who uses that word as a pejorative is a beeping disgrace to the human race. So please just unfollow me right now. And I think it's worth pointing out. He says these sorts of things repeatedly over the last many years, like here where he says, "I am one of those woke communists you worry about," and then he speaks at the World Economic Forum repeatedly on topics involving making big catalysts for global change and things along those lines. And his family has a very strong long-term history with communism, and that's just kind of a thing he does. Now, I'm not here to tell you that Linus Torvalds is some sort of evil monster. I'm not here to tell you that his contributions to Linux and open source and Git and so many other things are bad or evil because of his particular political beliefs. But I am pointing out that there are lots and lots of things that we've seen over the last few years, such as within the Linux Foundation, where they've gone very distinctly heavily political. And the leadership there, I mean, Linus himself is, well, he's a woke communist, and he speaks at the World Economic Forum, and then this is just kind of the sort of thing that he does and is. And it's worth noting that the people behind so many of the very political policies that have come out of the very DEI policies and otherwise within the tech industry have been very heavily influenced by their politics, it would seem. Right? Speaking at the WEF, declaring they are woke communists, right? And again, this isn't taking anything out of context. This is just simply providing the context, showing you the words that they're saying, showing you where they go to speak in China about, global large-scale change and everything else, and noting that the organizations they're involved with are then enforcing political change on their membership, and it raises a lot of red flags. And I want to wrap this up by making a repeated statement that free and open source software is very much not socialist nor communist in nature. This is something that comes up regularly. We see some individuals like Linus Torvalds himself who are distinctly left wing in their politics, right? They're woke communists, they support transgenderism, and they're pro-abortion and they're pro-communism and all these sorts of things. And in fact, he's not alone. There's a lot of people in leadership positions throughout free and open source software that hold similar or even some of the exact same political views. But open source and free software itself is not socialist, nor is it communist. In fact, it isn't even compatible with socialism or communism. In fact, you couldn't even have socialism or communism without capitalism. I want to read to you a comic strip that I wrote, 5 going on 6 years ago now, specifically addressing this because it comes up regularly and it's worth reinforcing it. I'm gonna zoom in here so we can see it a little better. So is free and open source software similar to socialism or communism? And let's look at it. In socialism, the means of production or distribution are owned or regulated by the community as a whole. Right? To various degrees, this applies to both socialism and to communism. In open source, let me scroll over here so you can see the whole thing. In open source or free software, the means of production or distribution are owned by the creator of that software, then granted to users who agree to the terms set forth by the creator. Because with open source, if you write a new piece of software, you get to decide how it is licensed. This is very, very important. The key reason that open source is not socialism nor communism comes down to one very important word: consent. Very, very important here. If free and open source software were truly socialist in nature, the source code that you created would not be owned by you, and you would have no say over the licensing, no say at all. In fact, free market forces tend to influence which licenses are more popular and successful, both for the creators and the software and the end users itself. You see, open source doesn't work. In fact, it can't even really exist without capitalism. That's one of the reasons that both free software and open source began in the United States of America. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go eat a steak, light up some fireworks, and write some code. This is a very important. It's a very important thing to remember, that even though we see many people who are leaders within the open source and free software world espousing socialist and sometimes even communist ideals, that the core concept of both free software and open source is not even compatible with socialism or communism. Notice, you didn't see free software spring out of the communist Soviet Union. It didn't happen. You didn't see the concept of open source spontaneously spring out of Cuba under Castro or North Korea. It didn't happen there. If the reality is, if open source and free software would have actually been compatible with communism, we would have seen it come out of communist countries. It would have been a natural thing for them to do if it would have been compatible at all, but it simply was not. It came out of the United States of America, the USA. I mean, the home of the Whopper, baby. Capitalism. That's where it came out of. And so it is somewhat interesting and confusing when we see people go so hard, so terribly hard to the political left, like Linus Torvalds with communism and the World Economic Forum and everything else. It almost creates a cognitive dissonance. It's confusing how they could hold two ideas in their head at the same time. One that is communism for everything, and two that is, well, open source, which is completely incompatible with communism. But yet that's what we have. That's the scenario that we all live in. It's worth noting. It is definitely worth noting. Now, this is not I'm not making a call to action here. I'm not making a call to action, nor am I making any accusations. I'm just reading the quotes from people. I am showing you the times that they spoke at various events and providing my own analysis of software licensing and what it is or is not compatible with. And it is something that we need to take stock of regularly and note, because it is having an impact on not just the cultures, but the actual policies of large tech foundations, software projects, and technology corporations. And it is being driven very heavily by people like Linus. I want to say thank you to all of the Lunduke Journal subscribers for allowing me to do this sort of reporting, this sort of analysis. You're clearly not going to see this coming out of Wired or Verge or ZDNet or Gizmodo. Gizmodo definitely isn't going to post this video. So thank you to Lunduke Journal subscribers for allowing this to get out there, because we're hitting millions and millions of people, well over 10 million people every month, or 10 million views every month of the Lunduke Journal shows are getting out there. So I think it's beneficial that the points of view from the Lunduke Journal and from many of you are getting out there in the world to counteract the kind of the craziness that's sort of happening out there. And these sorts of things need to be happening. So thank you to the Lunduke Journal subscribers. I really couldn't do this without you. Go to lunduke.com, pick up a subscription, pick up a free subscription on any of the various platforms, pick up a paid subscription. Sometimes there's deals running where you can get a discount on a monthly, yearly, or lifetime subscription. The best thing to do is go to lunduke.com and check it out there and see if there's any sales running. Just just because. You can get all the cool perks that are there, the MP4 downloads, the ebook downloads, the exclusive forum. It's all up at lunduke.com. I couldn't do this without all of you subscribers, keeping the lights on here and keeping the Lunduke Journal big tech free and advertising free. You guys are amazing. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, wait a minute. I'd be remiss if I didn't show you the lifetime subscriber wall. That's right here. These are lifetime subscribers to the Lunduke Journal. And if you want to get added to this wall, just go to lunduke.com, find my email address, email me, make sure you get a lifetime subscription, email me, and I'll put you up on this wall. I only do it by request, so I'm not going to out you if you don't want to be there. End broadcast.